Welcome to the Mentors Podcast. I'm your host, Emre Yılmaz, and today I'm speaking with Terry Virts, a retired NASA astronaut, author, filmmaker, podcaster, and a seasoned explorer whose insights are the product of a lifetime dedicated to the pursuit of science and exploration. He has piloted a space shuttle, commanded the International Space Station, and captured the beauty of our planet with over 300,000 photographs taken from space. When I reached out to Terry's team, their response was immediate and warm, showing his down-to-earth nature and openness to share his experiences. When his publicist confirmed his participation, it was a moment of true excitement and honor for me. Despite battling a cold, he joined me with a sense of humor, joking about his Barry White-like voice, and was ready to explore a range of topics from spaceflight to the complexities of global politics. In today's conversation, we touch upon what Terry eloquently describes as the juxtaposition of the sublime and mundane, a phrase that encapsulates the essence of human life in space. Terry spoke about his motivations as a kid, his journey on becoming an astronaut, life on ISS, the renowned change in perspective universally experienced by those who have seen our planet from out there, the current state of American democracy, the challenges posed by authoritarian governments around the globe, media polarization, the intricacies of the primary system here in the US, and much more. As we embark on this enlightening conversation, Terry's stories and reflections promise to elevate our understanding of not just space, but also the delicate and complex nature of our existence on this planet. And now I bring you Terry Virts. Terry, welcome to the Mentors Podcast. It's an honor.
Thanks for having me on.
Before we dive into space, I want to mention your podcast, Down to Earth with Terry Virts. I've been tuning in and I love it. Just listen to the episode with the British election expert.
It's I do a very varied podcast. Like, there's no theme. I had the Washington Post food critic. That was about my favorite episode. I had the guy that wrote the Afghanistan papers about the Afghanistan war. A lot of Ukraine people, aliens were the top episodes by far, by like 2 orders of magnitude. Some Academy Award winner, filmmakers. So I had a completely random set of people, which kind of describes my life. I know a lot of people in different fields, and that was fun.
Yeah, it's totally a why not moment.
Exactly.
I mean, if I didn't come up with the idea of this podcast, how could I ever speak to an astronaut? I heard you say that the book Right Stuff really kicked off your dream of space exploration when you were a kid. To stick to the dream, though, what kept you going? Was it curiosity, legacy, or something else?
I was just excited about going into space. I mean, I think every kid understands that intuitively. For me, it was seeing that we had gone to the moon during Apollo, and I thought, man, that's what I want to do when I grow up. It was just, plus I loved astronomy in general. My parents had got me a telescope when I was young. I used to subscribe to Astronomy Magazine. They got me every year for Christmas or my birthday. I'd get an Astronomy Magazine subscription. So there was no internet then. So I had to wait every month to see pictures of Jupiter and Saturn and whatever Voyager was doing as it was going out into the solar system. I just always loved space. I think it was just kind of who I am.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I used to say that I wanted to be an astronaut too, but that didn't go too far. Having a dream is one thing, but actually going there is another. You had to become a test pilot, flew various aircrafts. Could you share what that journey was like for you?
I went to the Air Force Academy and I started flying gliders there. They have a program where you can solo a glider, and I did pretty well. So they made me an instructor. I just thought, like in Top Gun, afterwards they're like, you can come back and be an instructor. So went back and became a glider instructor. So I taught other kids how to fly, which ironically, during my career as an F-16 pilot, my wingman lost an engine one time. We were flying over Iraq and he had to glide back to an airfield in Turkey. He barely made it. And my time as a glider instructor really helped out there. And then I flew the Space Shuttle, which is like the world's biggest glider. So ironically, that time as an 18-year-old glider pilot ended up helping me in my career. So yeah, I went there, became an F-16 pilot, and then test pilot, which is the progression if you want to be an astronaut. And then I got lucky in 2000. NASA had a new class of astronauts, and they picked me.
In your book, How to Astronaut, you dive into all these different skills astronauts have to pick up, from doing your own medical tests to learning Russian. But what really caught my attention was you actually installing a module on the space station. Can you explain how that works? What's the prep like for a job like that?
That's a great question. In fact, this morning I was looking for an email and I came across my notes that I emailed myself the morning I launched. It's several pages of just super technical notes that my study notes. And that was one of the sections. I forgot probably 80% of what I was saying, but the basic premise of installing modules. And my first space flight was on a space shuttle Endeavour, and we actually finished building the ISS. So we installed Node 3 and the cupola, two modules. And the big picture is you grab the module with a big robotic arm. The space shuttle had kind of a medium-sized robotic arm. The space station has a big one. You pull it out of the shuttle payload bay, which is actually pretty stressful. You're moving this big 30,000 pound like school bus out of the shuttle payload bay, and you don't want to bang it into the walls. And then you hand it over to the station arm. The station arm grabs it, and then it just slowly. And when you watch this happening in real life, it's like watching paint dry. I mean, it moves like 1 inch per second, or it's barely moving. Then you slowly move it into the hatch, so that the hatch on the module lines up with the hatch on the space station. And then you slowly move it in until they're touching. And then once they're touching, there's some hooks that grab it and pull it tight. And then once the hooks have it, then there's some bolts that are driven robotically. And those bolts really just squeeze it in tight to make a seal so that the air doesn't leak. And then once you do that, you can let go with the robotic arm and the module is officially docked. And then you can open up the hatches. The first thing you want to do is equalize the pressure so that one side doesn't have more pressure than the other. And then once you do that, you open up the hatch and you can go in.
Was this simulated in those huge pools down in NASA?
Yeah, the robotics we didn't do in the pool because it's hard to move stuff through water. Once it's attached, then you go do spacewalks and you plug in cables on the outside, and we practice that in the pool. But for the actual robotic attachment, mostly you do it in computer simulators. You're just watching it on a computer screen.
Mm.
Although NASA did have this really cool like blow up module thing in Building 9, so it was life size. So you could sit there and watch this kind of balloon module docked with another module. It couldn't be the real thing because you don't want to be moving thousands of pounds around with a big, huge crane. But that balloon, I had forgot about this. I haven't seen that thing for 10 years until you just mentioned it. That was a pretty cool way to train, to see an actual life-size module moving. Most of it's done on computers.
Wow. And while all this is happening, you are on a ship that is traveling 5 miles a second, something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, 17,000 miles an hour.
Even on a vehicle on land, when you're going 20, 30 knots on water, you feel the wind and the movement. In a car, when you open a window.
Yeah.
How does it feel in space when you're moving like 17,000 miles an hour? Do you feel any kind of velocity?
Well, ironically, there is wind. It's really, 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 really thin air. Like if you open your helmet, you would die instantly. But there's a few oxygen particles out there. So you don't feel them, but they're there. And when you look out at the Earth and you see it moving by, it looks like it does when you're in an airliner. You look out the window and you can see the Earth moving by below. It's not moving fast.
Mm-hmm.
If you were down at 100 feet, it would be flying fast, right? But when you're up at 40,000 feet, 30,000 feet, it doesn't look like it's moving that fast. When you see the Earth, it's the same like relative motion. It looks like you're in an airliner looking out, except for when you really stare at the ground and you see the cities going by, you realize that, man, like those are cities going by or the countries going by. You realize how fast you're going. The reason it doesn't look like you're going that fast is because you're 500 or 1,000 miles away from the stuff that you're looking at.
Not only moving incredibly fast yourself, the Earth below you is also spinning and hurtling through space in an insane speed. Could you give us a little breakdown of this whole dynamic? How does this all work together from your perspective in orbit?
So Earth is rotating at the Kennedy Space Center. It's about 1,000 feet a second, so a mile every 5 seconds. Earth is going around the sun at tens of thousands of miles an hour. The sun is going around the galaxy at hundreds of thousands of miles an hour. So everything's moving. The galaxy is moving at like millions of miles an hour. So all that motion, Einstein was right. All that motion really is relative. It's how fast are you moving relative to something else, which is, it sounds like kind of a sarcastic question, but it's really true. Like you have to know, we're all moving 100,000 miles an hour right now around the galaxy. So you have to know what you're comparing your velocities to.
Hmm. So we are all down here pretty much oblivious to the fact that we are in a giant rock that is protected by a thin layer of atmosphere zooming through space. But up there, you got the best seat to this wild ride.
Yeah,
How does it feel?
it feels like, so you can see my view from above book right there.
Yes.
Right there. There it is. And you can see that the little thin atmosphere. It feels like, I remember the first time I realized this, like, hey, there's my planet over there and I'm not on it. That was a pretty profound moment. And you can see that we're all on this spaceship Earth going around the sun and going through the galaxy. You can see that from space. That's like a perspective switch that gets flipped. That planet is like our personal spaceship. And as my crewmate Samantha Cristoforetti said this, we should all be crewmates and not just passengers.
Mm. I'm really curious about something you just touched on, that shift in perspective. When you first stepped out on a spacewalk
Hmm.
and saw our planet from that vantage point,
Yeah.
did it hit you on an emotional level? What was that moment like for you?
I had a really profound moment, but the first thing I did when I went outside, we have a tether, just like a little 3 or 4 foot rope, if you will. I connected that to the space station and I let go with both hands just so I could look down at the planet and make sure I didn't get vertigo. Because some astronauts had talked about getting vertigo when they went out on a spacewalk. I didn't, but I just wanted to make sure. So I was outside for maybe 30 seconds, completely hands free. All right, I'm good. And 99% of spacewalks are work. And I wrote about this. My job was putting cables down, power and data, electrical cables, and I put in grease on bolts. I had to put some grease on that robotic arm I was talking about. And then every once in a while, very rarely, but a few times, I stopped and I looked out, and it's like it just blows you away. It is more beautiful than anything you can imagine until you see it yourself. It was like I was hearing from God, like I was seeing creation from God's perspective, and humans aren't supposed to see this. That's kind of how I felt.
Mm.
And then I had to get back to work to put grease on the next bolt. So it was an incredible, all of spaceflight is like that. I call it a juxtaposition of sublime and mundane, where you have this sublime amazingness, and then you have to get back to work because you're flying the space shuttle or you're doing some maintenance task or something. So that was my kind of spiritual moment out in space, but it only lasted a few seconds. Then I had to get back to work.
You have taken more photos in space than anyone else, and they are absolutely incredible. But I guess they still don't quite capture the whole experience, do they? There must be something about seeing Earth from up there with your own eyes that just can't be conveyed through a lens. How does the reality compare to the pictures?
I wanted to take pictures to share. My daughter's a really good painting artist, and when I got back, I tried. The cameras don't capture sunsets exactly right because it shows lines in the sunset that are not the same. Like your eye perceives different lines than the camera shows. Anyway, I tried painting and quickly realized that I probably need to stick to other things. That's not my strong suit.
Well, painting may not be your forte, but you definitely take great pictures. The perspective change you mentioned that led you to see things less in black and white.
Hmm.
How has that shift influenced your interactions and understanding of the world now that you're back on the ground?
Well, I've had the privilege. I've actually spoken on all seven continents in the last few years. So I've been around the world. I've had a chance to see a lot of people, and I've come to two conclusions. Well, it's a bunch of conclusions, but one is that people are people. I went to China 5 times in 2018. The little Chinese kids would come up in their little orange astronaut suits. Everybody's fascinated by space. Every parent wants their kids to get a good education and healthcare and grow up to find a good job. Everybody is the same. The differences that we have here on Earth are governments. And you can see that from space. I did not expect to see it from space, but it came across loud and clear in that you can see areas of the world where there's a lot of lights on at night and other areas where they're not. And it hit me that what I was looking at is corruption or dictatorships or well functioning democracies. And that's not a perfect explanation, but it's pretty close.
Mm.
And you can see that from space. And basically, when we get that kind of thing right, lives are generally pretty good down here on the planet. And when we get that kind of thing wrong, we end up with Russia attacking Ukraine and disasters in Africa and stuff like that. So I came back from space thinking, man, we need to get this stuff right, because when it goes well, things go really well. Like in the last century, hundreds of millions or maybe billions of people have come out of extreme poverty. And we really have cut the amount of war has really reduced in the past century since World War One.
Mm-hmm.
Literacy is up. Gender equality is up. A lot of things around the world have gotten a lot better. All we hear about is how terrible it is and we're all going to die. And that's not true, but we can't just take it for granted. In America, we have this thing called manifest destiny, except for that's not real. And there is no manifest destiny. Like America's not destined for anything. We have to keep up. You have to keep on working at it. I don't know if are you a sports person? I love sports. The Patriots were the American football team. Well, they're not winning anymore. They had a period where they were good and then they were on their decline. If you're a European football thing, Manchester United, like they were dominant for a while and then they kind of fell off. So nothing's guaranteed on Earth, and we need to make sure that we get that right, because that's what drives lives on Earth. Do you want to live in a authoritarian surveillance state where you have to say what the dictator says you have to say, or do you want to have freedom? And so that's kind of my passion now. That was my big takeaway.
I love that. And I mean, since you can't take the world's politicians up to space to have them get to this kind of understanding,
Yeah.
what can you do other than sharing your experiences, sharing your heart and mind? What can be done?
So I've thought about this a lot, and I have two answers. I want to get back to the first one, but what I can do right now is I'm trying to help American democracy. The system we have right now is just designed for division. Our media is horrendous. Whatever media you listen to is just going to make you mad and angry at the other side.
Mm-hmm.
It's super divisive. And our partisan primary system in America guarantees that most of the people in Congress are very partisan. And so even though it's a 50-50 split, the votes are always 50-50. Back in the day, we used to have 60-40 splits or whatever, but the votes were really mixed. Republicans and Democrats would vote with each other depending on the bill. Now they never do that. It's always 100% party line, and it's because of our partisan primary system and gerrymandering. So those are very boring, technical, political things that if we don't get right, American democracy is at risk. It's really a problem. It's really a problem. And so I'm trying to work on that. You mentioned that if you could just bring politicians into space, everything would be good. 3 of the Russian cosmonauts that I flew with, I was in outer space. I had pictures of me and them floating around. 3 of them came back to join the Duma, the Russian parliament, and support the war in Ukraine and support Putin. So these should be the most enlightened human beings on Earth. They know right from wrong. They know the truth, and yet they're still supporting this evil war of genocide and aggression. And so just the fact that you go into space does not change you. If you put Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump in space, they would not come back as, enlightened small d Democrats. They wouldn't change. So that was disappointing, but it's the truth.
I see.
But most people are not like that. Most people don't want war. If you let everybody vote, like there would not be war.
Sure.
The only reason there's war is we have political leaders that are in charge and they get to decide. So anyway, yeah, these things, they don't necessarily sound like astronaut stuff. The really fun stuff is like, how do you land on the moon? I love that technical stuff. But the reality is we all live down here on Earth and we need to get that right, I think.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I was thinking of asking you. I'm sure you get the world news when you're up there in your downtime. And with a Russian cosmonaut friend of yours, crewmate of yours, where you share life and death situations together, you get to see your human side. You have the capacity to see each other as just another human being rather than being Russian or American.
Yeah.
When it came to these kind of adversarial issues between United States and Russia, how was that perceived amongst you guys up there?
We knew it was happening, of course. I was there right when they annexed Crimea and they started the war in Donetsk and they shot down that airplane and we put sanctions on Russia. So I was there in the middle of that. We wouldn't ignore it. We said, hey, politics is politics. We need to focus on the crew. And I had a great time with them. I really enjoyed having dinner on the Russian segment. I enjoyed hanging out with them. They were great crewmates. I really liked my time living in Russia and flying with the Russians. I love the food. I love the language.
Hmm.
I just really enjoyed it. But the reality is that country has a horrendous history of colonialism not in the 1800s like Europe, but like in 2023, like
Hmm.
Russia has been a really bad country for a century now. Ever since the Communist Revolution, they have been one of the biggest sources of misery on earth. They did the Holodomor. Most Americans have never heard of Holodomor. It was starvation. Stalin killed millions of Ukrainians in the 1930s. All of the countries that the Soviet Union had colonized, like 100% of them, when they get democracy, vote to not be aligned with Russia. They want to come to the West. So it's not like the Russian people per se, but whatever system of government they have has been really, really, really bad. Like not good for people on Earth. And so anyway, my eyes have been opened. I really enjoyed flying with them. I loved individually working with them. But the reality is what the things that their government's doing is really bad.
Hmm. With your enhanced capacity of empathy, how would you empathize with your crewmates that after they came down, they became part of the government and supported the invasion of Ukraine? How would you try to see from their point of view?
Well, they get a free apartment in Moscow, they get a free car,
Uh,
they get political power. Their children are now working at the Russian oil companies, Rosneft.
Mhm.
I mean, they get stuff. And if you criticize Putin, you go to jail, or your
I see.
family decides to commit mass suicide together, which has happened several times. So, from a just personal safety, like my life is better if I go along with this, and my life is worse if I don't. I understand that that's why they do it. And some of them are true believers. Some of them really want to make Russia great again. That's kind of the premise of Putin is really mad and bitter and hateful that they lost the Cold War to us and they want to get us back. He's a very revengeful person. And I think that desire for revenge is not only limited to one man. A lot of people feel that. But I think it's mostly a desire just to get stuff. Yeah, I can get money and jobs and apartments, or I can go to jail. And they choose the wrong thing. They choose the morally wrong thing. Is what they do.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's tough.
but it's what's happening, and I can't. I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
Well, despite the complex geopolitics, there's this still extraordinary collaboration happening up there on the
Hmm.
ISS. Kind of gives you hope. I remember an astronaut saying in a documentary that the space station is a testament to what humanity can achieve when we work together. It's a powerful reminder every time I see the ISS pass overhead. Do you think this example of unity could inspire more joint efforts on Earth?
Well, they still can be the. I used to say that the space station is an example of how people can and should work together. You know, it is. The problem is it comes down to the system of government. If the system of government allows people to have a say in how they're governed, it generally turns out pretty good. if the system of government is the self-licking ice cream cone, if the goal is to keep itself in power, and to make its country great again, whenever you have one man who's in unlimited power for life and he has a grudge, he wants to make his country great again, really bad things happen.
Yeah.
That's not a good way to have things set up. And when you have, or one party, it's one party rule, you can't have other parties, and this is the way it has to be. There's two different ways. One of the ways leads to freedom and generally economic success, and the other way leads to one party telling everybody what to do.
Well, I can relate to that. I was born and raised in Istanbul, Turkey, and I came here at age 16 to study around 25 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I've been watching Turkey grapple with these governance issues.
Mhm.
But here in America, the robust checks and balances system always stood out to me. It's a
Yeah.
system that works pretty well. Or
Until it doesn't.
right, until it was
Yes.
stress tested on January 6th, which you already said. It's a reminder that no system is infallible. And plus, no one should be in power for 23 years, as Tayyip Erdogan has in Turkey, a nation that claims to be a fully functioning democracy.
So has Putin, by the way. So has Putin. I told you about that. My roommate or my wingman gliding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was in Turkey when that happened. I was at Incirlik in Dana.
Wow.
I spent many years there in Turkey. It's a beautiful country. It's amazing.
What years were you there?
Basically 95 to 98.
I see. Right before our latest emperor came to power.
Yes,
when things were
exactly. But things were very different then. And by the way, Turkey is going to fly an astronaut soon. But yes, what's happened in Turkey is emblematic of Hungary, now Slovakia, now Holland, now America. It's we need to make sure that democratic backsliding does not continue. Because if democracies fail, there's other systems that are more than happy to take over.
Mm-hmm.
You can read 1984 to get a taste of what that's like. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that's kind of my passion right now.
When you say that's your passion, are we going to see you on the political arena?
Well, trust me, like this last couple months have been a very intense soul searching, and I've talked to a lot of people about what to do. But I could get elected from one party or the other. I'm kind of a radical moderate. There's not a party for me. I could get elected from one party or the other. They spend about half their time that you have to leave Congress, walk across the street, and just call people asking for money. So about half their time is spent asking for money, and the other half their time is spent bashing the other party. And that you could have one good guy that is good for like a year or 2 years, and then eventually gets beaten down by the system. The other things like trying to get rid of partisan primaries, the way we do those, those are the bigger picture of how to fix democracy. So I don't know. I don't know what I want to do when I grow up, but I definitely have thought about it a lot.
I totally get it. All the things you mentioned sound so exhausting. There may be better ways to use the energy. Maybe the work you're already doing could have a greater impact than you becoming a professional politician anyways.
The problem, if you're a governor or a senator or whatever, if you do the right thing, you get primary. And it's really hard. Like if you're a Republican who says, hey, Donald Trump did something wrong,
Done.
You're gone. They've purged the party. A healthy party has debates, an unhealthy party has witch hunts. And especially the Republican Party today is not healthy. Clearly, there's no debates. There's only witch hunts for people who don't have loyalty to the orange man. So
Mm-hmm.
there's some serious things that need to be fixed in America, because if America gets it right, there's hope for the rest of the world. If America goes down the tubes, man, who else is going to lead? China, Russia,
Mm-hmm.
Brazil, the European Union. I love Europe. I would love to live there, but they're not the strongest political, entity. So America needs to get it right.
What do you think?
I think we will, because I'm an optimist, and I think that good wins in the end. And, here's another thing. Going back, it's amazing the parallels to World War II. What Putin is doing the parallels between him and Hitler are like overwhelming. But if you go back to December 6th, 1941, the day before Pearl Harbor,
Uh-huh.
most Americans did not want to get involved in the war. Most Americans did not want to send troops to Europe. There was a big, stop sending all this money and equipment to Europe. It wasn't until Japan attacked us that people came to their senses. And there was a guy named Father Coughlin in the 1930s. Most people don't know this. He was a Catholic priest. He was like the Sean Hannity or Tucker Carlson or whatever of the 1930s.
Hmm.
25% of Americans tuned into his radio program. He had a weekly radio program. There's 120 million Americans. So on the weekends, 30 million Americans listened to Father Coughlin. He was a fascist. He was pro-Hitler. He was pro-Mussolini. He was a blatant fascist. And so the point I'm making is that we've always had this problem with people wanting strong men. It's human nature to want a strong man as your leader. And in America was no different in World War II. Thankfully, we had enough people who weren't like that kind of tipped the scales to the right direction. So I hope that even though we see that same percentage today, I hope that that in the end, the good guys win. That's my hope.
Well, thank you for that. I hope so too. It's been an eye-opening experience for me to move out of New York and stepping out of the echo chamber of New York City.
Yeah.
I get to meet a broader spectrum of fellow Americans, and people are fundamentally good.
Right.
But it's astonishing to see such a strong belief in Donald Trump as the sole savior of America by many. It's a phenomena.
Die große Lüge. You know what Hitler said. Die große Lüge was the big lie. And the basic German propaganda technique was lie big, lie often, keep on lying, keep on saying it over and over. The bigger the lie. And that's Trump. That if you say it more often, and you say how great you are, and you say you're the only guy. I mean, those are all warning signs. It's Erdogan. There's
Same playbook.
It's the same guy. It's the same guy.
Mm-hmm.
You can go back to Julius Caesar, Mussolini. It's the same human being, right? The same exact personality type. And the thing is, like, I understand why some Americans don't like globalism. Like, it's not been great for most Americans. I understand why most Americans are skeptical of woke gender ideology. Like,
Mm-hmm.
in the coastal elite, the Democratic Party has become the party of coastal elites. Most Americans are not coastal elites. And so I think there are legitimate policies that blue collar workers want. I totally agree with that. It's just Trump's the wrong guy. Trump's not the guy to do it. He's a failure in everything that he's done. So although I don't agree with like super liberal woke policies, I just think that I know without a doubt that Trump's not the guy to make smart, coherent policy decisions. And so we're in a mess where there's not somebody that's reasonably in the middle that can get the right policies done. You have to be an extreme coastal elite liberal or Donald Trump. And the real answer is somewhere in between those two things.
Yeah. And the other problematic thing is, while trying to combat the misinformation and all the bad ideas, certain policies of the super woke doesn't really help bridge this huge divide.
These 3 college professors that just went before Congress and talked about anti-Semitism. Did you see this? This was a big scandal last week.
Yeah.
So should students be allowed to stand up and say, we should have a genocide against Jewish people, or we should have a genocide against men, or we should have a genocide against white people, or we should have a genocide against people from North Dakota? Like, the answer is really simple. No.
Mm-hmm.
Students can't say that. That goes against our policy. The answer is a really simple, that's a bet, yes or no. They couldn't bring themselves to say it. They're like, well, it's context dependent. And well, if a student says we should have a genocide against Jewish people, there's no context. That's wrong. And the answer has to be no. And so you could just see most, and look, this is Elise Stefanik. She's a radical person, but still you could see their tortured soul as a liberal to not be able to bring themselves to say that that was wrong. 80% of Americans, 90% of Americans don't get that, and they can see that something is wrong morally with that view. And that was just one example of how the Democratic Party and the left just have lost touch with most Americans.
Well, Terry, thank you for sharing your thoughts on this. I could talk to you for hours on these issues, but with the limited time, let's
Sure.
launch back
Yeah,
up
yeah.
to space.
The fun stuff. Yeah.
With the advancements of technology and the talk of potential missions to Mars, do you think experienced astronauts like yourself, who have already spent significant time in space, might be called for those long duration missions? And if so, would you consider going back?
That's a good question. So, the big risk for a mission to Mars is radiation because you're going to get a lot of radiation. You don't have the protection of the Earth's magnetic field or atmosphere. And so, on the one hand, you would like to send older people because their risk of dying from cancer is less because you just don't have as many years to live. So it's in some ways it's better to send old people. When you send older people, the risk of having a heart attack or other things is higher too. So they'd have to balance that out. I mean, the reality is when you leave NASA, you can't go back. There are private space companies. There's one called Axiom that they have a couple of retired NASA astronauts. There are other ways for astronauts to fly, but I don't think I'm going to be going to Mars anytime. Well, nobody's going to be going to Mars anytime soon. That's going to take some. I actually do a talk about human exploration of Mars, and that's going to take some time.
I see. And what is that time?
You know, when we landed on the moon, Werner von Braun, our German, the guy that built the Saturn V, he had a plan to get to Mars by 1989. It was 20 years. And then in 1989, George H.W. Bush got elected, and the first thing he said, we're sending Americans to Mars. And the price tag came in and it got canceled immediately. And then in 2009, Obama came in and George W. Bush had a plan to go to the moon, and Obama didn't like W, so he canceled the moon program and said, we're on a journey to Mars. It'll take 20 years. So we've been 20 years from Mars since 1969. And every time I talk to Congress or whatever, I always say, look, it's not about the rocket science, it's about the political science.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to figure out, all right, this is what we're doing and get the political will and stick to it. So I think the first step is going to be the moon. We need to see if we can get that done. And if that works, then that will be a stepping stone to Mars. But we're still a long way from sending humans to Mars.
Like a decade, you would say?
I don't think. Look, a decade ago was 2013, so I think it's at least 2 decades.
Wow!
But it really requires political will, to do it, and then the budget to do it. And if you haven't noticed, our budget has been exploding in the last 3 or 4 years since 2019. So I don't think there's going to be a huge amount of spare government money to spend on that, but we'll see.
Elon Musk often talks about the goal of making space travel more affordable, particularly with technologies like reusable boosters.
Yeah.
Considering these advancements, do you believe we are closer to making those missions possible?
I think it's only possible if guys like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos of Blue Origin, if their rockets succeed. So I think what Musk is doing with Starship, I think what Bezos is doing with New Glenn, I think those are absolutely mandatory, or we're never going to get to Mars. The SLS, the NASA's rocket, is apparently the NASA GAO says it's $4 billion a launch. So we need to get that cost below $4 billion per rocket launch.
People have the belief or they think that right now with all the pressing issues on Earth, it's not that necessary to spend all this money to go up on space. But I personally think this is that biggest unknown, and knowing that more could only help humans flourish and evolve. What do you think?
If space exploration is beneficial to life on Earth?
Yeah, many people say that it's right now we have so much to fix. Why spend taxpayers' money on that?
Well, in the 1970s, that was the big argument, And the real answer is there will always be poor on Earth. There's always going to be needs on Earth. And so we can either be stuck here on Earth or we can explore beyond. The other thing, they say my shuttle flights cost $1 billion each. And when I went into space, I noticed that we didn't just open up the payload bay door and launch $1 billion bills out in outer space. That money was spent here on Earth on engineers and secretaries and janitors and scientists and all those people bought houses and cars and put their kids in college and save for retirement. So the money that we spend on space gets recirculated at a higher rate than probably just about any other government money that's spent on anything.
Mm-hmm.
So It is expensive, and we can't just have unlimited, and we need to make sure we're efficient with that money. But there's pretty profound benefits. Not only the scientific stuff that we learn in cooperating with other nations is really important. And at the end of the day, if we might learn something out in space too, being able to send people there. So there's a lot of benefits to space, even though there is a cost.
During your time, over 200 days, in order to keep your muscles and bones alive, you had to do like 2.5 hours of exercise a day, something like that, right? So
Yeah.
that kind of rigorous training, how did that shift your well-being on Earth? Do you continue working out rigorously since you're back?
Yeah. Uh, Not that much. I need to probably do more. Plus, there's no McDonald's or anything in space. So the food, is pretty good, and you're exercising, and I was in pretty good shape. I need to get back there. When COVID happened and we were all stuck, I wrote a book. I got stuck in space for a month because the cargo ships blew up and we were low on cargo and we didn't know when we were coming back to Earth. So I wrote a little short 10-chapter book, how being stuck in space was like being stuck in COVID. And there's a lot of similarities. Exercise is an important part of that. It's just, you need to exercise not only for physical health, but also for your mental health. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
All these acronyms you guys had to learn. Being an astronaut comes with knowing these acronyms. So DAM, debris avoidance maneuver. So you had to maneuver the ship knowing that surveyed objects up there that are floating in massive speeds. You had to steer the ship numerous times, right?
Yeah. In 2015, when I was commander, we had a maneuver to avoid debris from a Chinese anti-satellite test in 2007. So they blew up a satellite, and that debris is still at the orbit of the space station. And we still have to maneuver the station, I don't know, once a year, a couple times a year. So space debris is a huge issue. I've had it on my podcast a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
Countries need to stop blowing up satellites intentionally. The Russians did it just before their war in Ukraine. The Indians did it back in 2019 to prove that they could do it. So countries need to stop doing that because it's making a mess in space.
In some sort of a panel, another panelist next to you was this guy from Lockheed Martin or Boeing. He was talking about how they survey every single space debris that is out there, and agencies and private companies use their database on maneuvering around them.
Yeah.
With our current technology, do we have the capacity to clean that up?
No. Yes, you could launch a satellite or an astronaut and they could grab a piece of debris and bring it back to Earth, but there's tens of thousands of them, and they're all in different orbits, and they're all going 5 or 8 kilometers or miles a second. And so you can't launch tens of thousands of satellites to do that. And then every time you launch a satellite, you probably create a few pieces of debris because some bolt will fall off or something, right? And sometimes the satellites fail and then they're stuck in orbit. So there's a really good private company called Leo Labs. The former astronaut colleague Ed Liu is part of that team. They have a great business model tracking space debris and warning private companies like Starlink and others that, hey, you might want to maneuver your satellite. That's a good business model, tracking and warning, but cleaning up, I have not personally heard of a good way to do that yet.
And when you're on a spacewalk, in your book, you mentioned that sometimes that debris, your eyes can't even see it. You notice them on your time-lapse videos.
Yeah.
So there's always the inherent possibility of a really tiny speck putting a hole on your spacesuit. Is that always a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was outside on my spacewalks, I felt very much on the clock because you just don't have the protection you have from the metal can you're in when you're inside. So, and you see all these there's a lot of little small divots on the outside of the space station where some dust or a piece of paint or whatever hit the space station. So it's a threat. Thankfully, it's a big sky and it doesn't happen too often, but there's a risk being in space.
But is there a contingency plan for it as they have for everything else? Like in case something puts a hole, do you have some time to get back in the station?
Yeah, the station or the suit can withstand a 30 minutes of leak through, I forgot what the size, like a 1/10 of an inch hole, or there's some specification size hole. But the other question is, doesn't just go through your spacesuit, it's going to go through your body too, right? So
Mm,
what part of your
yeah.
body did it go through? And we do have a plan. If you have an incapacitated crew member, you always go out in pairs so your wingman can come over and grab you and drag you inside. So there are some backup plans, but it'd be better to just not get hit by debris to begin with.
So, our universal tool against the unknown, humor. What's humor's role in your life, especially with all the cosmic unknown? You guys must be laughing a lot up there.
I use humor to deal with stress. Like when my wingman lost his engine, and I cracked some jokes so as he was like going down, just to try and break the ice a little bit. We had a period in space. I wrote a whole chapter in my first book about this ammonia leak, but we had a period of about a month where it was continuous alarms. Like it got old having all these alarms going off. Most of them were false, but I made a little matrix of emergencies, warnings, cautions, and funny smells, and US segment, Russian segment. So there was a matrix of like where all these things were happening and how severe the warning was. And so we were just putting tick marks in the box and on a little yellow sticky in the command post module of the space station. And there we had a lot. I think I have a picture of this somewhere. We had like 18 or 19 warnings go off in a couple week period. So I deal with things through humor.
That helps, right?
You're either going to laugh or you're going to cry, so you may as well laugh.
And I love how every time you're talking about a tragic outcome, you're like, you have the rest of your life to figure that out.
Yeah.
I really like that expression you use.
Well, you know my book pretty well. You've obviously read it, so thank you.
Oh, thank you for writing it.
And by the way, I wrote it myself.
I know.
I think many other books are written with ghostwriters, but I actually wrote that myself.
Well, now talking to you in person, one can tell easily that it's not written by someone else. It's you talking in the book.
Well, thanks.
What would be your advice to young people that they think sky is not the limit and want to pursue what you pursued? What would be your advice to them?
Well, the one piece of advice I give to everybody, and I think this is going to be the title of my next book, is don't tell yourself no. That described my career journey to becoming an astronaut. But if there's some dream that you have, something you want to do in life, don't tell yourself no. That's the first step. Tell yourself yes if. And if you want to be a doctor, okay, I can be a doctor if I get an undergrad degree and I get good grades and I do well on the MCAT, I get some experience in the medical field. And then you have to pick out your plan and come up with a strategy. Words are easy and cheap. So you have to actually come up with a plan to get to the dream you want to get to. But that first step is the most important one. Don't tell yourself no. Make the decision to go for it. Just, if nothing else, just to be true to yourself.
Well, I did not say no to myself, and I decided to write to you to talk to me on this podcast. And there you are.
There you go. I got Buzz Aldrin to be our speaker when I was a captain in Germany flying F-16s.
Wow.
I didn't know him. I didn't know anybody. I just wrote to the astronaut office out of the blue. And anyway, and he came over and I got to fly with him in an F-16. And we're still friends 25 years later. So don't tell yourself no. You never know what's going to happen.
Thank you so much, Terry. It's been an honor.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to let me know when the podcast comes out.